Ethan Vale did not remember the moment his ship broke apart. 1 second, he was flying above a dead mountain belt on the edge of Sector 9. The next, the sky turned white. Strange blue lightning wrapped around the ship like living hands. Every screen failed. The engine screamed once, then went silent. After that, there was only falling. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was lying on cold stone. For a long moment, he did not move. His head burned. His chest hurt. The air smelled strange, clean, sweet, and old, like rain on metal and flowers growing in forgotten places. He pushed himself up slowly and looked around. At first, his mind refused to understand what he was seeing. He was not in a crash field. He was in a city, but not just any city. The road beneath him was made of smooth, golden stone, wide enough for 10 ships to land side by side. Giant towers stood on both sides, reaching high into the mist. Their windows glowed with soft blue light. Bridges connected one tower to another far above his head. Huge statues of women stood in long rows, each one taller than a building, watching the empty streets with calm stone faces. Ethan turned in a slow circle. His breathing grew harder. No map showed this, he whispered. This place should not exist. His ship was gone. No smoke, no metal, no broken parts. It was as if the city had swallowed the crash itself. He touched the small emergency scanner on his belt. Dead. He tried his comm unit. Nothing. The mountains around the city rose like walls, black and sharp, closing the place in from every side. Above them hung a pale silver sky with 2 faint moons. He had explored strange worlds before, but this place felt different. It did not feel abandoned. It felt hidden. Then he heard footsteps. Not normal footsteps. Heavy, slow, powerful. Ethan turned toward the sound, and his blood ran cold. Women were walking toward him from the far end of the road. They were enormous. Each one stood at least 3 times his height, maybe more. Their steps were graceful, but the ground still shook under them. They wore flowing silver and white clothing marked with glowing lines, as if their dresses carried living energy. Their faces were calm, beautiful, and unreadable. Their eyes stayed on him without blinking. Ethan stepped back. Then another group appeared behind him. He was surrounded. His hand moved toward the small survival knife at his side, but even he knew how foolish that was. Against women that size, the blade looked like a toy. The tallest among them stopped a short distance away. Her dark hair moved softly in the wind, and a bright metal band rested across her forehead like a crown. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was deep, smooth, and strangely gentle. It echoed between the towers. Ethan swallowed. "Where am I?" The giant woman looked at him for a moment before answering. "You are in Aelthara," she said. "The city the stars forgot." Ethan stared at her. "I need to leave." A few of the women exchanged quiet looks. Not mocking. Not angry. Something else. Almost sadness. "You cannot," the tall one said. Ethan's chest tightened. "Cannot, or will not." Before she could answer, a loud horn echoed through the city. Every woman on the street became still. A second horn followed. Then, high above, lights began turning on across the towers one by one. Blue, gold, white. The city was waking. The tall woman lowered her eyes to Ethan again. "Our queen has waited many years for this day," she said. Ethan frowned. "For what day?" Now the woman's calm face changed for the first time. Not much. Just enough for him to see the weight behind her eyes. For the day a man would fall from the sky. A cold silence filled the road. Ethan tried to laugh, but the sound never came out. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. He looked past them at the long streets, the sealed gates, the high silent towers. There were no men anywhere. No children. No voices from houses. Only these giant women and their strange, heavy stillness. Something had happened here. Something terrible. The women opened a path in front of him, but it did not feel like freedom. It felt like a road that had already been chosen. "You will come with us," said the tall one. Ethan did not move. "And if I say no?" She leaned down slightly, and though her face stayed calm, her answer carried the weight of stone. "Then you will still come. Only with fear instead of understanding." Ethan looked from one giant face to another. None of them smiled. At last, he stepped forward. As they led him deeper into the city, he noticed more details. Doors sealed with ancient symbols, broken statues hidden behind hanging vines, empty windows where someone once lived and laughed. The place was beautiful, but beauty could not hide the truth. This city was dying, and somehow, for some reason, they believed he had fallen there to save it. Then, as Ethan crossed beneath a massive silver gate, a whisper reached his ears from somewhere above. "Do not trust the Queen." He stopped at once and looked up, but there was no one there, only the silent towers, and the hidden city that was already closing around him. Ethan walked between the giant women with slow, careful steps. No chains held him. No weapon touched his back, but he still felt trapped. The streets of Aelthara were too perfect, too clean, too quiet. Blue lights shone along the edges of the golden roads. Tall white trees grew from stone gardens. Thin streams of glowing water moved through silver channels beside the path. Everything looked beautiful. Everything looked peaceful. And yet, nothing felt alive. No laughter came from the houses. No markets were open. No children ran through the streets. Ethan saw giant doors, giant windows, giant bridges high above him, but almost all of them were empty. It felt less like a city and more like the memory of one. The tall woman leading him noticed the way he looked around. "You search for answers," she said. Ethan glanced up at her. "I search for a reason not to think this is a bad dream." For the first time, something close to amusement touched her face. "You are not dreaming, human." He stayed silent for a few steps, then asked, "Do you have a name?" The woman looked ahead. "Lyra." "Ethan." "I know," she said. That made him uneasy again. They reached a wide, circular hall built into the center of the city. Massive columns stood around it like the trunks of ancient trees. Above them, a glass ceiling showed the pale sky. At the far end of the hall stood a throne of white metal and blue crystal, and on it sat the queen. She was taller than the others and older, though not weak. Her silver robes flowed around her like moonlight over water. Her face was calm, almost kind, but her eyes were sharp. They studied Ethan as if she had already spent years imagining this moment. He felt suddenly very small. "So," the queen said, her voice low and smooth, "the sky has finally answered." Ethan lifted his chin. "I did not come here by choice." "No," the queen replied, "but perhaps choice is not the force that guides the most important moments." Lyra stepped aside, leaving Ethan alone in the center of the hall. The queen rose slowly from her throne. Even from a distance, her presence felt heavy. "My name is Queen Seralith," she said, "and you stand in the last hidden city of the Aelthara." Ethan frowned. "The last." A shadow passed through the faces around the hall. Seralith came down from the throne platform, one slow step at a time. "Once," she said, "our people ruled valleys, towers, and star roads. We were builders, guardians, and scholars. But ages ago, something broke inside our bloodline. Our strength remained. Our minds remained. Our cities remained for a time." She paused. "Our future did not." Ethan looked around the chamber again. Now the silence made sense in a darker way. "No children," he said quietly. No one answered him, but no one needed to. The queen stopped before him. Births became fewer, then rare, then almost none. Generation after generation, our world grew quieter. Her eyes held his, and all our records spoke of one final possibility. Ethan already knew he would hate the next words. "A man from beyond our walls." The room remained still, waiting for his reaction. Ethan gave a dry laugh. "That sounds less like science and more like desperation." A few of the women shifted at his tone, but the queen did not. "Desperation often forces people to protect truth inside strange stories," Seralith said. That line stayed in Ethan's mind. Truth inside strange stories. The queen ordered food brought to him, though the dishes were made for giant hands and giant lives. Lyra later guided him to a chamber prepared for him near the inner palace. The room was large, warm, and guarded, with a bed far too big and a balcony overlooking the sleeping city. "It is comfortable," Ethan said, "for a prison." Lyra stood near the doorway. "If you were a prisoner, you would know it." He turned toward her. Then what am I? Lyra hesitated. That, she said, depends on what the queen truly wants. Ethan narrowed his eyes. You do not trust her either. Lyra's face hardened at once. Be careful with your words. Before he could press further, she left. Hours passed. Ethan could not sleep. The whisper he had heard near the gate kept returning to him. Do not trust the queen. At last he stepped onto the balcony. The night air was cool. Aelthara glowed beneath him like a lost dream buried inside the mountains. Then he saw movement far below. A hooded figure crossed one of the lower courtyards and vanished through a half-broken arch hidden behind hanging vines. Ethan stared. He had been told the city was safe. Watched. Controlled. So why was someone moving in secret? And why, a moment later, did he see Lyra herself step into the shadows and follow them? Ethan's pulse quickened. The queen had given him a story. But deep inside Aelthara, another story had already begun, and this one was hiding in the dark. Ethan waited only a few seconds after Lyra disappeared. Then he moved. He slipped out of his chamber, crossed the quiet hall, and found a narrow stairway leading down from the inner palace. The walls glowed with pale blue lines, but the lower he went, the weaker the light became. Soon he was walking through shadow and silence, guided only by the memory of what he had seen from the balcony. Outside, the night air felt colder. The hidden courtyard was smaller than it had looked from above. Broken stone circles covered the ground. Old vines climbed over the walls. At the far end stood the half-broken arch he had seen before. Behind it was a dark passage cut into the stone. Ethan hesitated. Everything inside him said this was a bad idea. But every answer he had been given so far felt clean, polished, and incomplete. He needed the truth, not another careful speech from the queen. So he stepped through the arch. The tunnel beyond smelled of dust, metal, and something older, like ancient rooms sealed for too many years. He moved slowly, one hand against the wall. Far ahead, he saw a weak orange light. Voices followed a moment later. One was Lyra's. The other was softer, older, and filled with anger. Ethan came closer and stopped behind a cracked stone pillar. The chamber beyond was hidden beneath the city. It was huge, circular, and half-ruined. Broken machines stood along the walls. Giant glass tubes rose toward the ceiling, empty and dark. In the center of the room floated a dim blue sphere above a metal platform. It turned slowly like a dying star. Lyra stood near it. Facing her was an older, giant woman wrapped in a dark gray cloak. One side of her face was marked by a long silver scar. Her eyes were sharp and tired. You should not have come here again, Lyra said. And yet you keep returning, the older woman replied. So perhaps neither of us learns very well. Lyra folded her arms. The human changes everything. The human proves I was right, the woman said. The queen has hidden the truth too long. Ethan leaned forward, trying to hear every word. Lyra's voice dropped. If Seralith learns you are still using this place. She already knows, the woman cut in. She knows because she fears what is buried here. The older woman touched the floating blue sphere. At once, broken screens flickered around the room. Ethan saw lines of unknown symbols. Images flashed between them. Children running through bright streets, towers filled with life, halls crowded with faces. Then the images changed. Empty rooms, medical chambers, rows of silent cradles. Ethan felt his chest tighten. This was Aelthara before the silence. And then after it. The city was not cursed by fate, the older woman said. It was damaged by choice. Lyra's expression darkened. Lower your voice. No, the woman replied. He deserves to know. Ethan froze. Slowly, both women turned toward the pillar where he was hiding. You can come out now, Ethan, Lyra said. He stepped into the chamber, trying not to look surprised. The older woman gave him a long, hard look. So this is the Skyborn man. And you are? Ethan asked. My name is Maelys, she said. Once I served as the Queen's chief genetic architect. Before truth became dangerous. Ethan looked from her to the machines, then back to Lyra. You knew about this place. Lyra did not deny it. I knew enough to keep watching. Ethan laughed quietly, though there was no humor in it. That seems common in this city. Everyone watches. No one speaks. Meili stepped closer, then listened carefully. The queen told you our people were dying. That part is true, but she made it sound like a mystery of nature. It was not. She touched one of the broken control panels. A sharp blue light ran through the room. This chamber once held the systems that kept our people stable, Meili said. Growth balance, bloodline repair, reproductive health. The heart of our civilization was science, not prophecy. Her eyes hardened. But after a civil conflict generations ago, those systems were shut down. Some feared knowledge. Some feared losing power. Since then, every child not born has been the cost of that choice. Ethan felt cold all over. You mean this city is dying because someone decided it should? Not decided, Meili said bitterly. Aloud, Lyra looked away. Even she seemed unable to argue. Ethan stared at the dim blue sphere in the center. Then why bring me here? Why talk about fate and records and a man from beyond the walls? Meili answered first. Because somewhere in the deepest archives, there is evidence that human DNA may be able to restart what was lost. The words settled over the chamber like falling ash. Ethan took a slow step back. So, I'm not a guest. No, Meili said. You are a key. Before Ethan could speak again, a loud alarm suddenly thundered through the chamber. Red light burst across the walls. One of the broken screens flickered alive, showing the outer barrier of the city. Something huge was moving in the darkness beyond it. And whatever lived outside Aelthara had just found a way in. The alarm did not stop. Its deep metallic cry rolled through the hidden chamber again and again, shaking dust from the ceiling. Red light flashed across the broken machines. The blue sphere at the center spun faster now, as if the old room itself had woken in fear. Ethan stared at the live screen. Beyond the outer barrier of Aelthara, giant shapes moved through the dark. At first, they looked like shadows. Then one step closer, and Ethan saw its true form. It was huge, bent and wrong. Its body looked half-grown, half-broken like something built in a lab and then thrown away. Its arms were too long. Its jaw opened too wide. Pale light moved under its skin like poison. More shapes appeared behind it. Lyra's face went hard. The outer beasts. Meili cursed under her breath. They should not be this close. On the screen, one creature slammed itself against the barrier. Blue fire burst across the shield. A second followed, then a third. The whole chamber trembled. Ethan looked from the screen to Meili. You said this city is dying because the old systems were shut down. Are these things part of that too? Meili hesitated only a moment. Yes. That one word landed like a stone. The first founders did not only change their own bodies, she said. They also made living weapons during the old wars. Some were meant to guard the city. Some were meant to fight beyond it. When the system collapsed, not all of them died. Some escaped into the wastelands. And now they're back, Ethan said. No, Lyra replied, eyes fixed on the screen. They were always there. The failing barrier is what brought them close. The red warning light grew brighter. More voices echoed in the tunnels above. Somewhere in the city, horns began to sound. Ethan turned to Lyra. What happens if the barrier breaks? She answered without softness. The city falls by morning. Meili moved to a side console and hit a series of glowing symbols. A hidden map rose into the air above the panel. It showed Aelthara from below, its towers, roads, lower halls, and one deep chamber directly beneath the palace. There is one chance left, she said. Lyra stepped forward. The Heart Vault. Ethan looked at the glowing point under the throne district. That is the machine that kept your people stable? Meili nodded. It balanced growth, blood repair, and life cycles across the city. When it was shut down, decline began. If restarted, it could strengthen the barrier and begin healing the bloodline. Then why are we standing here? Ethan asked. Let's restart it. Meili's face darkened. Because the queen sealed it herself. The words hit even Lyra like a blow. No, Lyra said. Her ancestors, perhaps, but not Seralith. Meili met her eyes. You still want to believe that? Before Lyra could answer, the chamber doors burst open. 3 armored royal guards entered, each carrying long silver weapons that glowed at the tips. Behind them came Queen Seralith. She did not look surprised to see Ethan there. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The alarm continued above them like the heartbeat of panic. Then the queen looked at Maelys. You never learn when to stop digging. Maelys straightened. And you never learned that buried truth grows sharper with time. Ethan stepped between them before either side could move. Enough. The city is under attack. If the Heart Vault can save it, open it. Seralith's eyes turned to him. For the first time, he saw something behind her calm mask. Not pride. Fear. You think I do not know what is at stake? She asked. I have carried this city on failing shoulders for longer than you can imagine. Then why seal the machine? Ethan demanded. The queen's voice dropped. Because I saw what it did. Silence filled the room. Years ago, she explained, the vault had been activated in secret during a civil crisis. The system surged out of control. Towers lost power. Entire districts collapsed. Thousands died. Since that day, Seralith chose order over risk, silence over hope. She told stories of fate because truth had already killed too many. Maelys shook her head. No, fear killed them. And fear is killing us still. A violent shock threw everyone off balance. When the screen shattered, on the central display, a section of the outer barrier cracked like glass. The beasts were breaking through. Lyra grabbed Ethan's arm. There is no more time. Ethan looked at the queen, then at the map of the Heart Vault below the throne. Everything in him said this city was built on secrets, lies, and old mistakes. But he also remembered the empty streets, the silent homes, the missing children. Aelthara was not only hiding from a world, it was hiding from its own future. He turned back to Seralith. Open the vault. The queen closed her eyes for one brief moment. Then she gave the order. And deep beneath the throne of Aelthara, something ancient began to wake. The Heart Vault opened with a sound like a mountain breathing. Deep below the throne chamber, ancient doors of silver stone pulled apart, and a cold blue light spilled into the darkness. Ethan, Lyra, Queen Seralith, and Maelys stood at the edge of a vast circular room hidden beneath the city. Rings of metal turned slowly around a core of living energy. Old symbols glowed across the floor. Broken cables hung like vines from a ceiling. And in the center of it all stood the machine that had once kept Aelthara alive. It was beautiful and terrifying. Above them, the city shook again. Another impact thundered through the stone. Dust fell from the ceiling in pale clouds. They are inside the outer district now, Lyra said, listening to the distant sounds of battle. We do not have much time. Maelys moved toward the central console. The vault is still active, but weak. It remembers its purpose. Her hands passed over the glowing surface. It needs a living command pattern to fully wake. Ethan looked at her. Human DNA? Yes, Maelys said. But not only that. He frowned. What do you mean? Before she could answer, the lights around the chamber suddenly dimmed. Then a voice echoed through the vault. It was not human. It was old, calm, and clear. Authorization requires bonded intent. Ethan stared at the spinning rings above him. Bonded intent. Maelys's face changed. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Lyra stepped closer. The founders built a protection rule. No one could control the city alone. The machine spoke again. Renewal denied to domination. Renewal granted to trust. The meaning struck them all at once. The Heart Vault would not restart for power. It would not obey fear. It would only respond to a true act of shared will between the outsider and the people of Aelthara. Seralith lowered her head. That is why it rejected me. Her voice had become quiet, heavy with old regret. I came to command it, not to serve the future. Another violent tremor ripped through the chamber. A distant scream echoed from far above. The battle had reached the inner city. Lyra turned to Ethan. If we fail now, there will be nothing left to save. Ethan looked at the machine, then at the women beside him. This city had lied to him. It had trapped him. It had almost used him. And yet, he had also seen its pain. The empty schools, the silent homes, the fear hidden behind calm faces. Aelthara was not evil. It was wounded. It had been surviving so long that it had forgotten how to hope without fear. He stepped toward the center. What do I do? Melis pointed to two glowing platforms before the main core. One for you. One for one of us. Lyra did not hesitate. She stepped onto the second platform. Seralith looked at her in surprise. You would take this burden? Lyra did not turn. No, I would take this chance. The machine began to hum. Blue lines rose from the floor and wrapped around Ethan's arms like light made solid. Across from him, the same light moved around Lyra. The air grew warm. The spinning rings above them turned faster. Then the machine asked its final question. Do you choose renewal? Ethan felt the whole weight of the city in that moment. Not just its future, but its past, its failures, its grief, its last fragile hope. He looked at Lyra. She was no longer only a guard, no longer only a giant from a hidden world. She was the proof that Aelthara still had strength left in it. Yes, Ethan said. Lyra answered at the same time. Yes. The heart vault awakened. A great wave of blue-white light burst upward through the core and shot into the city above. Every wall, tower, and road of Aelthara lit up at once. The dead systems came alive. The broken barrier reformed in a burning circle around the city. Outside, the attacking beasts screamed as the new energy struck them and drove them back into the wasteland. Inside the city, power returned. Gardens long asleep opened under the sudden light. Silent halls filled with sound. The old medical chambers restarted. Deep within the blood of the Aelthari, the damage pattern began to repair. Not in one perfect moment, but truly. For the first time in generations, the future had begun moving again. When the light finally settled, Seralith fell to one knee. Tears shone in her eyes, though her face remained proud. I ruled through fear, she said, and fear nearly buried us forever. Melis looked toward the rising light above. Then let this be the end of it. Days later, Aelthara no longer felt like a grave wrapped in beauty. It felt alive, not healed completely, but waking. The queen stepped down from the throne. The council was rebuilt. Hidden truths were opened to the people. And for the first time in many years, the city did not speak only of survival. It spoke of tomorrow. At the highest tower, Ethan stood beside Lyra and looked over the shining roads below. You can leave now, she told him. He looked at the city, at the lights, at the voices rising from streets that had once been silent. Then he gave a small smile. Maybe, he said, I landed here for a reason after all. And far below, in the city the stars had forgotten, hope returned like morning.